There's no question that there's a connection between increased carbon dioxide concentrations and the fluctuations in temperature around the international increase in temperatures that we see, averages around the world. So I would urge whoever you spoke to about this to look at some of the scientific research, which is really fascinating. And it's actually a tremendous body of research that the IPCC puts together every 7 years. They go through a tremendous process of consensus building and developing what are their most conservative findings. Because scientists by nature tend to be conservative. You have to prove it to them, right? They won't accept anything unless you prove it to them. And you can imagine if you get hundreds of scientists from around the world and they're all the smartest people in their country, they all have an opinion. So when they put out their consensus findings, they're actually the most conservative findings that they have. So any one of those researchers may have research that says other types of things that the whole body didn't necessarily agree was the consensus science. Very interesting source. If you're interested, I would recommend looking at some of the IPCC science.
What are your thoughts of people living on a planet that mostly the only time they care about the Earth is on Earth Day?
Well, I think that more and more that's not so true. I see things about the Earth almost once a week, more than that, in major newspapers, magazines, and of course I work at EPA, so I see it every day. But I notice that this issue is not just once a year, and I think the reason is because we actually need water. We actually need drinking water. We actually need clean water to make our cultures work. So I think that you see a lot of business people who are interested in the environment on more than once a year basis for reasons that basically are that they rely on natural resources in order to exist.
EPA has recently declared greenhouse gases to be a health threat. How will this affect the push for alternate energy sources?
That's a good question. This is quite recent in terms of the public issue of the endangerment finding of carbon dioxide with relation to transport vehicles. Alternative energy is cleaner than what we would call conventional energy sources. So the race is on to find cleaner energy. And whether it's cleaning up what we call conventional energy sources, making them less carbon intensive, or funding alternative energy, or both, which I would probably anticipate it'll be both. I would say that the finding of greenhouse gases or carbon dioxide as a pollutant puts a value on a cleaner energy source. It makes it more valuable to society because it's not associated with the pollutant, right? So I would say it's raising the profile.
What kinds of alternate fuel sources do you think will be the most practical in creating a more sustainable energy grid as soon as possible?
I believe firmly that we need a diverse portfolio of energy choices. And the reason why is because lots of different energy sources have advantages and disadvantages, whether it's, we have wind in certain places, sun in other places, we have access to geothermal power in other places. We also have tremendous investment in our existing power infrastructure, which we take for granted, but it's actually very significant. It takes years to build these systems, and we need them. So I think in the short term, the best thing that we can invest in is energy efficiency. And then second to that would be alternative energy. But alternative energy is not going to shut down the plants that we currently have, because what we need is to gradually substitute in, right, if you're thinking like for a game, substitute in your new players, keep your old players until you need to always have a strong team. You know, we always need that power. So I think the diverse approach is going to make the strongest network. And in that time, we'll figure out what are our strongest players and which ones we want to sub in more and which ones we want to take out, right?
Without alternate energy sources, how long would it be until natural resources run out?
There's an interesting discussion about peak oil, and a lot of people think of natural resources as in terms of petroleum, which we mine from deep underground. But then there's also a whole school of people who think that water is the most precious, most scarce resource that we have. And those people never, hopefully we never have to really know who's right. So I can't give you a number because one thing is scarcity, so there's how much you have coming in, and then there's how efficiently you use what you have, right? So if you start using things a lot more efficiently, then even if you're still just getting the same amount, you have more time, right? So those two dynamics are both at play at the same time, which is we see that we're running out of oil. It's less easy. Mexico's production is down of oil, right? Or you know, other countries have reduced their production of oil. But we don't know how efficiently we can use it, and that's something that technology can drive. So that this is open for debate, and it's always going to be a question people ask because it matters. So it's a very good question, but I don't have the answer to it.
Can you explain the process of global warming?
Sure. The way that I think about climate change, and I do like to use the word climate change more because it really reflects that the Earth is a system that has a lot of dynamics. This is quite a tough question. The shortest answer that I can give is to say that we're trapping more heat in our atmosphere. And a really good visual is if you've ever been in the kitchen chopping an onion, the first thing you do is take the paper off the onion, the purple or the pink orange stuff. That's how thin our atmosphere is on our Earth. It's as thin as the onion skin. So even though it seems huge to us when we look out the window and look up, it's actually very, very small. And so the theory on climate change is that particulates and gases, the actual chemical composition of this onion skin, traps more heat. When you have more heat, so there's all kinds of ways that this heat transports throughout the Earth system. And in fact, it goes from the equator through the tropics, through the there's these cells of the atmosphere where the air circulates all the way up to the poles. And that's actually a really amazing thing to look at. There's also something in the ocean that transports heat. So you have hotter water in some places and colder water in some places, and it moves around on this conveyor belt. So that's kind of a fascinating marble dynamic of heat moving around on the Earth. But the actual main theory behind climate change is that we're trapping more of the sun's radiation in the onion skin, and it's moving around and changing the dynamics that we call weather, that we call seasons, things of that nature. So that's my short explanation.
Considering everything that we discussed, as representative of the EPA, how confident are you that we are moving in the right direction towards making a more sustainable energy grid?
I think we have a lot of good technology that we can deploy, and the fact that you're interested in this and you're thinking about this and in school is a great sign that we're moving in the right direction. And it's really important that you and your friends in school keep focusing on this topic, because this is one of the ways that we can make our future cleaner and more sustainable. So I'm optimistic, and I'm glad to meet you today. So thanks for coming in.